Kamala Harris said in 2020, before she was vice president, that she would not trust any vaccine under development in the Trump administration. And a few months later, they were trying to speed up the process to mandate the very vaccine she said she wouldn't trust because it was all based on politics.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This is Legitical Response. We cover political news, and we cover all the malfeasance of the federal government. For goodness sakes, I came across this very, very interesting Judiciary Committee hearing where they were talking about the COVID and vaccines and all this other stuff. But so, by the way, right quick, right off the top, I'm going to say I'm not a doctor, so don't take any medical advice from me. Go talk to your doctor. Make sure that you know exactly what to do in this situation. Make sure you get your information from a reliable source, not from a congressional committee hearing, right? But we're not necessarily talking about medical information, right? I'm not trying to give you advice on anything. We're just discussing some of the aspects around the vaccine, around COVID-19, around how the government was involved in this. It's not necessarily have to do with COVID itself or the vaccines or anything like that, just basically how political it got and just how political it really didn't need to be. So I just want to roll this clip right quick. Check this out, you guys.
I thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 1, second paragraph, Dr. Pavia says this: the spread of misinformation and disinformation is weakening vaccine confidence. I would agree. And I would argue that the biggest cause of that is the government. Mr. Siri, would you agree that the biggest reason for vaccine hesitancy is because of what the United States government told us about COVID and about the vaccine itself?
Absolutely. I would absolutely agree with that. I think that when you listen to a lot of the statements made about vaccines, when you express benefits that clearly don't exist, that are easily disproven, that causes vaccine hesitancy. When you say over and over it can stop transmission, when the actual studies show it doesn't. Right. The studies by the CDC themselves, when they found more nasopharynx in the vaccinated, viral carriage in the vaccinated, in their nasopharynx versus the unvaccinated, and more rates, please.
Totally agree. Dr. Vaughn, would you agree?
I agree. I think, again, they were told one thing, and then most people, once the opposite happens, usually start to question whoever told them that.
Exactly. And why do you think, well, let me ask it this way. We had someone earlier say that, I think Dr. Pavia said this. He said the way it should be determined is patients and their doctors should decide how this works. But this thing got so political that you couldn't even do that, could you? You treated, I think you said 2,000 patients in your practice, and someone just asked you a number, how many people took the vaccine and died? And you said, I can't give you a number, but you gave 6 examples of people who had huge complications in your written testimony. So tell me about that relationship and how politics played into the relationship that's supposed to exist between the doctor and their patient.
Yeah, I think the biggest trust was lost when they were mandated to get something against their conscience. And I think that is one of the things that needs to be, especially when you talk about a physician that knows his patient. There are certain patients that don't need to have their immune system, in a sense, poked. And I think most physicians would agree with that. But that knowledge is what a physician and their patient have in the relationship that exists. It is not something that is found in a parking lot when you roll down your window.
Did you ever feel pressure from any government entity, certifying board or whatever in the way you were treating your patients?
I did not. Interestingly enough, I got, some other physicians decided that when I was saying that the vaccine did not necessarily prevent transmission, they wrote the Board of Medicine. I went down and had a discussion, but at that time it was proven that I was correct. If that makes sense, it was at that time.
Some of your colleagues tattletaled on you.
Yeah. People I had never met, other physicians. The other thing was, and again, this is my 5-year-old who basically
sitting in front of the board, and you happen to be right.
Yeah, going to kindergarten, I spoke in front of the board about masking my kindergartner. Again, my wife being a speech pathologist, masking children for 18 months didn't really help with their speech development, their ability to talk, and I also was turned in for that as well. Again, I asked the Attorney General of our state if I had given up my free speech when I became a physician. He told me I had not, but evidently that is not true.
Yeah, I mean, the cause of vaccine hesitancy, the reason this got so political, in my judgment, is because our government told us time and time again things that were not accurate. They told us, I said this in my opening statement, they told us masks work. They told us 6-foot social distancing, which meant we had to close schools and shut down businesses and restaurants. They told us that was based on science. They told us the vaccinated couldn't get it. They told us the vaccinated couldn't transmit it. They told us it wasn't with the lab. They told us all kinds of things that weren't true about where this thing came from in the lab. And then maybe the biggest one, first virus in human history where there's no natural immunity. Is that true, Dr. Vaughn? Is there natural immunity for this virus like every other virus?
I will tell you, again, I was early in actually having basically an immunoassay that would tell me among all my patients who had COVID. And there's about 7,000 people that I had that database on. And up until Omicron, the reinfection rate among my people that were seropositive was basically zero.
Yeah. Oh, no, we couldn't have that. You got anything to add? Well, let me just say this, and I'll let you finish, Mr. Siri. Kamala Harris said in 2020, before she was vice president, that she would not trust any vaccine under development in the Trump administration. And a few months later, they were trying to speed up the process to mandate the very vaccine she said she wouldn't trust because it was all based on politics. Mr. Siri, I'll give you the last word.
I'll go back to what Mr. Johnson said, who seemed very concerned about financial interests being able to influence, and I certainly agree with that. Billions of dollars were on the line for these pharmaceutical companies, and that really affected the way these vaccines were rolled out. That's a financial conflict of interest, especially when they didn't have to pay for any injuries, and they knew it beforehand because the federal government contractually agreed PrEP Act immunity would apply to every single vaccine that was rolled out. It's in the submission, the citations to all those contracts.
I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think
Okay, so that's very interesting, right? Right at the end, the guy starts talking about how they were contractually obligated to put the vaccines out there. And they just rolled this thing out with no hesitation whatsoever, like not thinking of the long-term ramifications of what could happen by taking the vaccine. They tried to force it down people's throats, which we're going to be talking about on another video I got coming up about the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Chevron and how that may affect a lot of administrative decisions. It may help, may hurt, you never know. But the fact that they got very political, like he said, Kamala Harris was like hesitant. Oh, I don't know if I'm going to take any vaccine from the Trump administration. But as soon as they got into office, as soon as they were in charge, you better take it. They went straight after the mandates, tried to mandate the vaccine for everybody. Of course, it wasn't necessarily the government with the mandates, but they recommended the mandates to companies. And companies fired people for not getting the vaccine. Thousands of, tens of thousands of people got fired or, were released from the military and all this other good jazz. It just goes to show that, these people had vaccine derangement, if you will, right? Like some people, and it caused the citizens to get vaccine derangement to an even much more severe degree, I guess you could say, because some people were, went absolutely nuts if you told them you didn't have the vaccine, you weren't wearing a mask, you weren't 6 foot across, 6 foot socially distanced or whatever. It blew my mind how some people just took the corporate narrative and ran with it. Didn't do any research. There's just an appeal to authority to the 9th degree, to the nth degree or whatever. It was just mind blowing how they just took this information and just took it as true and didn't think for a second to question, to be a little bit skeptical, to use your brain and think, is this logical? Does this make any sense? No, it kind of doesn't. Some of it didn't make any sense. The 6 foot social distancing never made sense to me because, somebody can sneeze and that particulate matter is going to float much more than 6 feet. It's going to float further away. Now, their excuse for that was, it dissipates and it becomes exponentially less and less and less, but that's still not going to stop the transmission. If somebody sneezes in a certain direction, you might want to get out of the way, but for the most part, if you were wearing a mask, that kind of stopped a lot of that from coming out. So put those together, you can see that, with a mask, 6 feet social distancing made no sense. Without a mask, it kind of does, logically. However, if you're outside, you got wind factors, you got all these other factors that play into that. But we were told time and time again by the corporate press, by politicians, that the vaccine will prevent transmission. It didn't. The vaccine will keep you from getting sick. It didn't. And the fact that it took lots of research, lots of investigation to find this out. And they are still hesitant to tell us about it, right? Like, we're dependent upon a Republican majority to actually investigate, to bring all this information out there, to get it to us, to come to find out that, hey, they outright lied. But yeah, I just wanted to throw this video together right quick because I saw that clip and it just, it blows my mind that nobody talks about this anymore. It seems like nobody's discussing this. You can still get in trouble on YouTube for talking about this kind of stuff if you don't have a disclosure basically saying that the corporate narrative is correct and that anything you say in this video is incorrect. It's just mind-blowing that they still make you do that. I understand kind of why, but at the same time, when you're talking about opinions, when you're talking about stuff like this, opinions matter and facts matter as well. But the simple fact that anybody would take the advice of somebody on YouTube, just a random person who's not a doctor, who's just a political commentator, would take their advice is kind of ridiculous on its face. But they still make us do that, so, it's whatever, blah, 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 blah. But, like I said, that's all I got for this one, I just wanted to put this quick video together just to throw it out there because I love this type of information. I think it's pertinent for us to know what's really going on in the world, what really happened around COVID, and how we were blinded to the facts, how we were lied to on a repeated basis, and how we learned of the truth, and then they still tried to lie about it. And it just, and nobody's being held to account. Nobody whatsoever. You get Dr. Fauci and all these people get up in front of Congress, and they pretty much shake their finger at them, maybe write a strongly worded letter, right? Well, like, we love strongly worded letters around here, but yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. But that's all I got, y'all. I want to thank everybody for watching, and y'all try to have a good day and stay legitical. Peace.